Everybody. Today we are coming to you live today. I am on a remote location. Wow. On a remote location with my phone on loud. I am on a remote
I don't know who
location.
it can be now.
Yeah, I don't know who it could be. Who could that be? I don't know who that is. They can go to voicemail. Sorry, whoever that is.
That's Men at
Probably a
Work.
caller. Anyway, Scott, and we're here. Huh, take two. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm here with Rachel with the Real Estate with Rachel and Mr. Miller show. We do have a guest with us today, but before we go into that, Rachel, if you'd be so kind to read our cool little disclaimer, that would be outstanding.
Absolutely. Welcome to the Rachel and Mr. Miller podcast, where we discuss real estate, real life, and occasionally things we probably shouldn't. We're pros in the buying and selling of residential real estate, but nothing you hear here is legal, financial, or professional advice outside of our licensed wheelhouse. It's just three humans talking. Proceed accordingly.
And like an adult beverage, treat it like that too. Oh, Rachel, you have got an amazing guest for us today. That
Yes.
absolutely everybody in real estate who's buying or selling or anything like that will end up not necessarily talking to Donnie, but will be dealing with his agency. So if you'd be so kind to introduce Donnie, and we will start rolling from there.
Yes, I met Donnie about 4 weeks ago at the Coffee and Collaboration that is hosted out here in Westlake at the Lure Restaurant. And this is Donnie LeCue, right? Am I saying it correctly? Donnie
Look
LeCue,
good. Yeah.
clerk recorder. Yes, clerk recorder division manager. So, welcome, Donnie. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We can't wait to learn about you and about all of the great information you have about protecting title on your property. So, Donnie, first, how long have you been with the county?
So I've been with Ventura County just for a couple years now. I started beginning of 2024, but I've been working in local government for a little over 10 years now. I started my career in Nevada, so I worked in the recorder and the county clerk world there. And then what's great about this agency is I get both of those worlds combined. So I've been with this agency working for Michelle Cincione for a couple of years.
And have you been doing the rounds, sharing the information that you shared with us at the Coffee and Collab? Have you been talking about this a lot lately? This title fraud topic.
Yeah, it's been a topic of interest lately. We do with the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team, which our agency participates with. We had our annual real estate fraud forum for the community this past March. So I know a lot of people saw that, and there have been a lot of opportunities that come out of that. I think people saw me and Michelle speak as well, and have seen opportunities like this to kind of reach out to the community more. So yeah, I think real estate fraud is something that is a concern for everybody. And we're always happy when we do events or support events to kind of raise awareness when more opportunities like this come out. So really happy to see how much interest there is. And thanks again for having me on this platform.
Donnie, do you see?
Yes.
We see a lot of memos come across from the DRE talking about fraud and things like that. Recently, I've seen a big uptick in land fraud. Are you seeing a lot of that out down there in Ventura County, or seeing that? I'm going to say in your sphere of influence, a lot more land fraud than residential fraud.
Um, Not necessarily. I've not seen, I guess, a differentiation between the two or an uptick here. I think, I'm always happy to say that Ventura County does a really good job, I think, of keeping people informed of how to avoid real estate fraud. We don't see it as much in this county, as much as you might see of it even in other places in the state. So actually, I think the most prevalent form of fraud is more along the lines of rental fraud, which ironically doesn't really touch my office because we don't record those rental agreements. But I would say that, and then more equity skimming type of fraud. So people trying to take advantage of the equity you have in your home, or fraudulent deeds of trust and things like that. would probably be the most prevalent types that we do see here when we see it.
Wow. The rental fraud, I see that happen a lot up in my neck of the woods, and I've seen it in terrible ways. People thought they had a house, they go to move in, they're like, "What are you doing here?" That type of rental fraud.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, and that's a great topic if you want to segue into it, but because I think it's something that people really need to know about, whether they are property owners, landlords who are renting out homes, or they are would-be renters. Essentially, like you said, the way rental fraud works is somebody poses as a homeowner, and you can't steal a house. It's not like a car where you can steal it and ship it off to another country. Yeah, exactly. So the house is always there. But what they do is they pose as the property owner who is showing the property or renting it out, and then they collect a deposit for it, and then they disappear. And we see it in cases. There's sight unseen cases where people are maybe moving here. They don't have the chance to come out and scope things out, but they saw this great rental online for a great price, and so they contact the poster of that, and they send them a $5,000 deposit, and they've got their house. They pack up their U-Haul, they get here, and the person they were to, that house may not even exist. It could have just been an AI image of a house that they created. We've also seen cases too where there's people will actually gain access to a vacant rental property, and they will show the house. So they'll let the people in, and I'm the owner. They might be a previous tenant who hang on to a key and the landlord never changed the locks on. They might be somebody who just broke into the house. So that's both for landlords. Be aware if you have vacant properties. I would do searches online for the image of the house that's on Zillow, as well as the property address, because you want to see, is anybody else marketing this anywhere? And then same with on-site security. Camera systems are pretty cheap these days, even if it's just temporarily while you're between tenants. But know who is on your property, so none of that's going on.
I know Scott's a big proponent of cameras because a lot of his listings are kind of far away and tucked away into large pieces, large parcels, or tucked away into the mountains or the desert hills. So I know Scott puts cameras into his properties, and he sends me interesting footage all the time. It is kind of crazy. But when it comes to the rental fraud, that's more about that fraud is about collecting money versus stealing title. And correct, it's more about somebody just figuring out a way to steal money. There was a handful of years ago, I want to say like a year or two before COVID, where I was looking to rent a home for like 2 weeks at the beach. And it turned out to be fraud. The house was there, like you say, it existed, but somebody was just like, I could tell by the way they were communicating with me, like the grammar was not on point. And it wasn't that it was like, it doesn't have to be written by a literature teacher, but you can tell when the grammar is not great. And then they just wanted to collect money. And then, we started to investigate, and then we found that, the house is actually, there is an owner and somebody lives in it. And we called them and said, hey, somebody's listing your house for rent. So for an Airbnb situation. So that was interesting. So I've experienced it in a way. Luckily, I didn't lose any money.
So Donnie, when it comes to somebody, I'm going to say stealing someone's house, I see like, late night, almost said podcast, but late night shows saying protect your home with XYZ lock, and it will lock your mortgage or lock your title. Yay, nay, thoughts, opinions, emotional outbursts on those type of things?
Well, I think that, they are good and beneficial programs. I think people need to understand what those programs can and cannot do. I do hear those programs kind of marketed as, when we say we're going to lock your title, a lot of people thinks that means that new documents can't be recorded against my property. They think it works like maybe your credit does, how you can lock your credit and people can't, apply for your credit until you unlock it. And real estate works very differently. So that's one thing for people to understand is these are notification programs. They're monitoring programs. So what they're going to do is monitor our records, which are public records, and notify you whenever something is recorded in your name or against your property, but it doesn't actually prevent the recording of things. We do have I'm happy to talk about kind of our fraud notification program we do, because we use actual physical letters in the mail that we send out to people in our county. And that is sort of a complement to these other services that are offered in the private industry, where you can sign up for something like electronically. But the program that we do is not something that our constituents have to opt into. We do it automatically. And a big part of that is trying to reach people who, sometimes the people most susceptible to fraud are the ones who are the least likely to understand that you have to go online and register for a program and sign up for something. So ours is automatic. Whenever certain types of documents that are most susceptible to fraud are reported, we automatically mail a physical letter out to the property owner in Ventura County. And we essentially let them know, hey, you may be aware of this recording, and 99.9% of the time they are. But essentially, we're saying if you're not aware of this, if this looks suspicious, if this isn't your signature on the document, for example, give us a call or contact us, because if we suspect fraud, we in the DA want to help you out with that. So that's something that we do. You don't have to sign up for, but I think that those other programs, those automated services, are a good complement to that too.
That's awesome. I was not aware that Ventura County did it. I'm going to Gratis. Is that a play on Rachel's where she works, Gratis Homes? That's awesome. And when you were saying that, I can speak to Chicago Title. I know Chicago Title, when we have a house that we put up for sale, Chicago Title sends a FedEx to the listed address saying, hey, your house is in escrow. Are you aware of that? And it goes out FedEx. And typically it has to be signed for. So between the two of those, that sounds like it. I'm never going to say it has everything covered, but it's better than nothing. Donnie, what would you say is I'm not trying to pigeonhole you on this, but in a perfect world, what's the absolute best way to guard against this? Someone swiping your house.
Yeah, I mean, these programs are good, but those are basically going to notify you of recordings. But there's something that everybody can do, and it's very similar to monitoring your credit. You may have a credit secure program or something, but you should still go in and look at your credit, like at least every 6 months or so, right? And make sure that there's nothing suspicious on there. Nobody applied for a loan that you don't recognize. People should be doing the exact same thing with their property records. And these are all public records. So you can do that through our website from the comfort of your own home. Go into our property record search and put in your name, and it'll show you an index of all the documents that we have under that name. You could also do that in our office, either in Ventura. We have another office in Thousand Oaks where you can do that research. And then we can provide you with copies of any of those documents too. But that's something that we encourage people to do at least every 6 months or so. When you're checking your credit, hop into your property records too, and make sure that there's nothing unexpected that's reported against your home. And if you do see anything, contact us. So people should be doing that. Don't rely on the letters we send or just these programs that Chicago Title and others offer.
Oops.
Those are all great. Do those, but also take it upon yourself to look at your own records, which you can do from home.
That's awesome.
Donnie, why would people commit fraud against title? What is the benefit to the fraudulent person? What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, they're trying to steal money at the end of the day. Like I said, with the house, it's the real estate fraud is oftentimes not somebody actually stealing the home itself, because somebody could create a fraudulent deed that says, I now own this home. And if it meets recording requirements, that deed is going to get recorded, and even if the assessor were to update that as the owner of record, by the time that gets discovered and goes to the courts for prosecution and to figure out what the situation is and to rectify it, the home's not going anywhere. So again, it's not like a car where you can take it and you go away somewhere. Real estate fraud, it's not usually necessarily stealing the house itself or the title to it. It's oftentimes just trying to use real estate as a means to extort money from people. So I use that example with with rental scams. Another one with equity skimming. This is one of the ones we send the letters for. But if people are behind on their mortgage, then whatever bank you owe money to, they're going to record a notice of default, which is a public record. And lending institutions, they do have programs that sort of help people out that are in these situations. If you're behind on your mortgage, they might be able to refinance and get you back on track. So those lending institutions, they look at our records every day and they try to find these notices of default. And then they contact that person and basically say, hey, we're a bank. We see that you're in trouble with your mortgage. We can help get you on track. But while the legitimate banks are doing that, there's also fraudsters that are posing as lenders. And so they'll also reach out and say, hey, we're a bank. If you want us to refinance for you, you won't have your next payment due for a few months and it'll be less than it ever was before and you'll get back on track. You just have to give us $5,000 to get started. And that might be the last $5,000 they have, especially if they're already behind on their mortgage. But that person was never actually a bank. They were just posing as one. So they take off and now this person is out the last $5,000 they had, plus they're still behind on their mortgage. So it's usually more so situations like that where people are using real estate as a means to get money out of people. We do see, I think the cases where I've seen where people are actually trying to steal title to home, sadly, it's usually in the family kind of cases. It's, happy to talk more about that too, but situations where somebody in the family might be trying to get people removed from the title or inherit a property solely for themselves versus splitting it with others in the family. So that sometimes happens too. But most of the victims, when the fraudsters are not somebody that they know personally, it's not really stealing title itself. It's getting money out of them somehow using real estate as a means.
That's terrifying. It really is. It
is terrifying. And I have a question because it is terrifying. And so how can a person know the difference between an actual a legitimate person calling on the phone to see if they can help versus a fraudulent person? How can somebody know the difference?
That is a really good question. And there's probably experts, especially in the lending field, who may have better suggestions. But I know for me, a piece of advice I've always taken is to verify who you're talking to. So if I got a call out of the blue and it was somebody saying that they were from my local bank, like a loan officer, and they wanted to discuss an opportunity with my accounts or something, I wouldn't continue the conversation because I don't know that they're actually from my bank. If I wanted to talk to them, I would say, all right, I'm going to give you a call back. I'd hang up. I would contact the bank directly at a known number for that financial institution and then ask to be transferred to that person. They may say that person doesn't actually exist, or they may transfer me to somebody by that name who is not the person that I was just talking to. But that's one piece of advice that I think is smart, is to find some way to verify. If somebody says I am from a known lending institution, don't stay in contact with them through the number that they contacted you, but try to get back in touch with them through a known channel for that bank. Now that's with banks that we know about, institutions that you're familiar with. But if you're getting the notice of default is one of the situations where we send that letter saying, hey, we were
whoops,
a notice of default. But yeah, those are situations for sure where people just need to be look for the red flags. Just like the situation you mentioned with the Airbnb, it seemed like there were some tells there that something may be off. Look for those. If they're saying we're with a bank and you've never heard of that bank, and you go to that website and it doesn't look like a legitimate website, be smart, but try to verify that you are talking to somebody who says who they say they are before you do any business with them, especially before you give any money to them.
Go ahead, Rich.
I'm sorry, Miller. Go ahead.
When this unfortunately does happen, to get it unwound, is it a long time? Is it quick? Is it easy? I imagine that it's probably like jumping through fire, trying to get it unwound.
Yeah, so that part of it, kind of rectifying the situation, that's more handled with the district attorney and with our courts. Of course, the district attorney would prosecute in those cases. But the reality is, it's very, very difficult to recover money in these cases. A lot of these frauds, especially with like the equity skimming type of frauds, they even happen overseas. And so, even when it is discovered, it is very difficult to get that money back. So in those cases, it really is important to not get scammed in the first place and not be doing business with somebody who says that they're a bank when they really aren't, because the reality is it is really difficult after.
That's when
Donnie, is there a certain demographic? Oh, sorry, Miller. We have a little bit of a lag, I think.
Yeah.
Is there a certain demographic that tends to experience this type of fraud? Like in my mind, I'm thinking like the baby boomers or the elderly people that are a little bit more vulnerable to this type of fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable assumption with any type of fraud. People who may be just less familiar with the technologies that are out there. And that's exactly why, like with those letters that we send out, we didn't want to do, an electronic program where people had to opt into, or even that they had to hear, because not everybody is reading the county's newsletters. We realize that. So we wanted something that's going to benefit people who, regardless of whether they've heard of us or not, you're still going to get these letters from us. So, I don't know if I've seen like actual statistics on it, but I think that's a fair assumption that the elderly, maybe I think people who English might not be their first language too. It might be a little more difficult to work through the red flags that others might see there. So
I can see with the, I'm going to say the advent of AI. I love AI. However, if it's used for bad things, and I could see how this AI could be used for really bad things, that this would end up on your desks at some point, and it'd be hard to tell what's real and what's not. I had a friend of mine last week who got a phone call from her grandson saying that he needed help in Mexico. He was in Montana, but it happened.
No.
And they had skimmed his voice, and she's like, "Where do I send the money?" The line ended up going dead, and they didn't send the money, but she was convinced that her grandson needed help in Mexico with AI. And I can see that type of shenanigans, and that's not the word I want to use, that could happen with some people, I'm going to say elderly, or English may not be their first language. This could, terrifying. Absolutely.
Donnie, you've spoken about the things that the recording office does to help circumvent fraud. What does the recorder's office do when fraud is actually suspected, regardless of all of those things in place?
So, the first thing is when we get a document, the reality is sometimes if a document is fraudulent, if somebody forges a signature and they forge the notary acknowledgement and everything, we're not going to be able to suspect that. I mean, they know how to get past those red flags, and there is no 100% secure system. Yes, we do make sure that documents are executed and that the signatures are notarized on that. But just like anything, of course, those things can be forged. So, the first thing is that when a document meets recording requirements, we record it. If we do suspect fraud, though, that's one situation where we wouldn't just immediately record it. We do pride ourselves on how quickly we record documents. You're a realtor in the county, so you know that. But if you submitted a document at midnight tonight, we'd have it recorded for you tomorrow morning. That's how quick we are. But if we get, any suspicion that this might be fraudulent, and that could be, we have a really good network of recorders in California, because usually if somebody hits one county in California, they're going down the coast and they might hit others. So we let each other know, hey, if you see this name or this property or something, have your ears open wide and just take a closer look at it. So if we suspected fraud for any reason with a document, we wouldn't record it right away. We would consult our legal counsel about it or the district attorney and just kind of let them know, this is what we know, please advise, should we record this or not? In some cases they say, no, don't record it, we'll handle it from here. But in Ventura County, we have, our district attorney's office has a real estate fraud unit, and that's pretty unique. I think we were like one of the first 2 counties in the state that actually had a real estate fraud unit in the DA's office. I think we're still one of the few that does. So what's great about that is part of the recording fees that we take when we record documents are used to fund that unit. And what that means is if somebody contacts us and they suspect fraud, and after looking at it, we're not legal agents, so we can't make that call of this is or isn't fraud. But if we suspect it, then we get them in touch with the district attorney's office and that fraud unit, and they can get that direct assistance from the district attorney. So, fraud can be difficult to prevent, but I think one thing we've done really well as a county is just making sure people have the direct qualified assistance who are victims through the district attorney. So we essentially get them into the hands of people who have those powers to prosecute.
If a realtor is working with somebody and the realtor suspects fraud, other than telling them to kick rocks, or jump in the ocean or go for a hike in the desert, what path should a realtor take if he or she, them or they, suspect there could be a problem?
They should contact the district attorney's office because
in their specific county. Okay. And
if they're in a county where they have a fraud unit, go there directly. If not, I would say just the district attorney in your county. Because if that person is, attempting to fraud them, they're doing it to others too. And so even if they avoid the scam, get it in the district attorney's hands so they can look into it and stop them from doing it to others.
I still like telling them to kick rocks or jump in the ocean, one of the two.
You can do that too.
You guys got a deep ocean and I got a deep desert. Rachel just disappeared. Oh, there she is.
Sorry, I had to disappear for a second. Sorry, I had my door open and my husband came home and he was really loud on the phone. Sorry.
So contacting the DA, I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'd say probably most major counties probably have a fraud unit, but then there may be counties like outlying counties that may or may not. Should they go would talking to the escrow officer be something that would be a benefit if a realtor thought something was funky?
I think notifying any parties involved is always a good idea because that escrow officer may have something in process that they can stop. But ultimately, the escrow officer, just like us, doesn't have the powers to investigate and prosecute that situation. So yes, there's nothing wrong with letting as many people as possible know that a situation is suspicious. But ultimately, I think it is best when that gets in the hands of people who can really do something about it. And that's going to be some form of prosecution or law enforcement that could help with that.
Talk loud, talk often, talk to everybody. Say, hey, there could be a problem here. Probably not the person you're suspecting of being a fraudster, but everybody around them. So you can say, hey, what's really going on here? Something feels weird. And I'll say, I've had escrow call me and say, Scott, something feels weird with this. And they, this is probably my third or fourth transaction in. There was a guy trying to buy some property, and turns out they didn't exist. The bank was a farce. I called the number, and the bank sounded like a real bank. But after some more due diligence, we're like, oh, these people don't exist. Yeah, great. Glad we didn't ask for that money. Yay. That's wild.
Donnie, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to when we first started to talk, and you had mentioned that you were kind of doing a circuit talking to different groups and the summits and whatnot. So is there an uptick in this type of fraud, which is what's bringing this topic to the forefront, or is this just, best practices and talking about it and keeping it top of mind?
I think on a national scale, there has certainly been an uptick. We're seeing those trends. You know, again in Ventura County, I wouldn't say, at least from what I've seen, there's been an increase in fraud or anything like that. I think we do a really good job of preventing it. It's never prevented entirely, but yeah, on a national scale, it's definitely something on the rise. And there's a lot of different places in the government and private industries that are looking for ways to prevent and fight against it. So, you know, even though we may have a particularly low rate of real estate fraud in our county, we want to keep it that way. And so we're always happy to take these opportunities and, most importantly, let people know what they can do to protect themselves and their families. You know, go to our website, learn how to search our property records. Do that for your elderly family members or anybody who might be vulnerable too. That's the best way to protect yourself, is to know what has been reported, because we don't always know if something was reported and there's something suspicious about it. The actual property owner is going to be able to spot that.
Awesome.
Very good.
Donnie, in the last couple of minutes here, what is the best way for, I'm going to say this, the people in Ventura County are going to be doing business county, to reach out to yourself or your agency to say, hey, what do we do? What's the best way for someone to do that?
Well, they can always give us a call. You can ask for me, Donnie LeCouy. I'm happy to answer, especially anything specific to real estate fraud. I'm happy to talk to you personally. But otherwise, we have a great team here. You know, we're sort of 3 different divisions and 1 agency, so it might depend on what your situation is, what you're looking for. But our website has a good breakdown of our phone numbers and how to reach out to us. But we're eager to take those calls, so feel free to get in touch with me or my team, and we're happy to help.
Donnie, what's your website?
And what is that website?
It's funny, we had an update, so I've been double checking. It's clerkrecorder.venturacounty.gov.
Now we always stumble over. This is the hardest question of all.
Rachel, how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, did Donnie say it? Did he say it?
He did.
Did you say your website, Donnie?
Yeah. It's clerkrecorder@venturacounty.gov.
There you go. Okay, I'm rachelmoreno.gratishomes.com. And Miller?
I am Scott Miller at at Epic, EPIQUE.me. And you can also find me this week in Bishop at Bishop Mule Days doing kettle corn. That's why I'm wearing my cool, look at, I even got a cool Mule Days badge. See, it says I'm a vendor there. I'm
That's very
popping.
cool, Mr. Miller.
I can pop you into a house too. Look at that. Woohoo! Donnie, you have been a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. And I thank you very much. And if you want to hang out for a second, we'll talk off the air. And with that, I will say, oh, by the way, we are season 2, episode 17.
That's right.
Season 2, episode 17. I'm Scott Miller from Epic Realty, Rachel Moreno from Gratis Homes, and Donnie LeCouy from Ventura County. Appreciate everybody's time today, and we will talk to everybody next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until next